The calm that had settled over the palace was deceptive. Though the infant slept peacefully, the warning signs of the warlord's approach were undeniable. Scouts had reported large movements near the Empire's borders, and intelligence suggested the enemy had learned of the bond between Elias and the child. This was no longer a test, it was a threat. Elias stood in the command chamber beside Queen Zaravana, reviewing maps and strategic reports. The walls glimmered softly, lit by panels that pulsed with energy, providing real-time updates on troop positions and environmental conditions. The Queen's presence was a reminder of the stakes. Her golden eyes, steady yet wary, watched every decision. "We cannot underestimate him," Elias said, pointing to the projected map. "He knows about the life bond. He may try to use it against us to distract or manipulate our defenses." Queen Zaravana nodded. "Then we will use it to our advantage. You have shown patience, calm, and intuition. These qualities are rare even among Varelians. The enemy will face not only our forces, but also the unbreakable connection you share with my son." Elias felt the bond pulse faintly, a reminder of the child's presence even beyond the nursery. The infant's trust and calm radiated through the connection, giving him insight into subtle shifts in energy, warning him of danger before it arrived. It was a gift, but also a responsibility heavier than any weapon he had ever carried. Preparations were swift and precise. Palace defenses were reinforced, patrols increased, and soldiers trained rigorously under Elias's guidance. Human strategies, combined with Varelian tactics, created an unexpected edge. They anticipated enemy movements, set traps, and coordinated with precision. Yet even as they prepared, Elias remained acutely aware of the most vital aspect, the infant. His safety was paramount. The day of the attack arrived quietly at first. A distant rumble, almost imperceptible, signaled the approach of the warlord's forces. Scouts confirmed movement, armored units, swift and calculated, advancing on multiple fronts. The palace alarm sounded, echoing through corridors and chambers. Guards took positions, but Elias moved first, his instinct guiding him as he entered the nursery to check on the infant. The child was awake, alert but calm, sensing the rising tension. Elias knelt beside him, humming softly, a tune of reassurance. He had perfected over weeks of connection, the infant responded, curling slightly toward him, cooing in a way that eased both their nerves. The bond was their shield, their silent communication, a source of strength in the storm to come. Queen Zaravana entered the room, her presence commanding yet gentle. "He trusts you completely," she said. "Use that trust wisely. The bond can guide us even through the chaos of battle." Elias nodded. He had fought countless battles, but this one was unlike any before. It was not only about strength or tactics, it was about trust, connection, and unwavering calm under pressure. The infant's life, the Queen's hopes, and the Empire's future rested on their combined resilience. The enemy arrived swiftly, their units striking in precise formations designed to exploit weaknesses. Elias anticipated their movements, adjusting palace defenses and guiding soldiers with clear, concise commands. The Varelian forces responded with discipline and skill. Yet it was the human insight, combined with the infant's subtle signals through the bond, that turned the tide. Through the chaos, Elias remained focused, projecting calm to the child, and through the bond to the soldiers. Every decision was measured, every action deliberate. The warlord's forces met resistance unlike any they had encountered, where human strategy and Varelian skill merged. Confusion and hesitation spread among the invaders. At one point, the enemy breached an outer wall, forcing a direct confrontation near the nursery. Elias moved swiftly, intercepting attackers with precision, while soldiers flanked to contain the threat. The infant, sensing danger, let out a small cry, which Elias immediately countered with a soft, steadying hum. The child's breathing slowed, and his trust radiated through the bond. Reinforcing Elias's confidence, Queen Zaravana arrived at his side, her powers enhancing their defenses, creating barriers and controlling enemy movements with grace and efficiency. The combined efforts of human ingenuity and Varelian abilities overwhelmed the intruders. who began to retreat under coordinated pressure. Yet the warlord was cunning. He attempted a final, desperate move, directing a swift strike toward the palace's inner sanctum, aiming to seize the infant. Elias anticipated it instantly, reacting with a blend of speed, strategy, and instinct. He intercepted the attackers, shielding the child while directing forces to contain the threat. The bond pulsed, guiding him, providing insight into the enemy's intentions even before they fully acted. The confrontation ended swiftly, the enemy retreating in disarray. The palace was secure, the infant safe, and the life bond had proven its strength. Guards and council members alike stared at Elias with awe, recognizing the human's critical role in the victory. Breathing heavily, Elias held the child close. The infant's small hands reached for him, cooing softly, a sound that carried more relief and gratitude than words could express. The queen approached, her expression a mixture of pride and emotion. "You have done more than protect him," she said softly. "You have proven that trust, courage, and calm can overcome even the most dangerous threats. You are not just a guardian. You're a force that can shape our future." Elias smiled faintly, exhausted but fulfilled. "I only did what needed to be done," he said. "He trusts me, and that trust guides me. I would do anything to keep him safe." The queen nodded, her eyes glimmering with something more than respect, something deeper, a bond forged through shared trials and mutual trust. "And in doing so, you have earned not only my trust but also the future of our empire. The life bond is stronger than any weapon, and through it, humanity has proven its strength once more." In the following days, peace returned to the palace. The council acknowledged Elias's critical role in defending the infant, and even previously skeptical members showed signs of acceptance. The queen spent time with him, discussing not only strategy, but the life they could build together. Guided by the bond that had brought them through peril, Elias continued to nurture the connection with the child, learning, teaching, and protecting. The infant responded with joy and trust, each day strengthening the bond and deepening the relationship. Guards and attendants marveled at the ease with which the human integrated into their culture, bridging gaps between species through patience, courage, and understanding. One evening, as the twin moons rose, Elias stood on the palace balcony with the queen and the infant. The city below glimmered like a sea of stars, calm after the storm of recent events. The infant slept peacefully in Elias's arms, safe and serene. "You have changed the course of our empire," Queen Zarivana said, softly. "Not through force alone, but through humanity. You have proven that courage, trust, and compassion can influence even the most complex and alien of worlds." Elias looked at her, then at the child. "Only did what any guardian would do." He replied, "But I see now that being human can mean more than fighting. It can mean understanding, guiding, and protecting in ways that matter most." The queen smiled, a rare and genuine expression. "And in doing so, you have not only earned the bond of my son, but also the respect and gratitude of our people. The future is brighter because of you." As night enveloped the crystalline city, Elias realized that his journey had transformed him. He had entered an alien world as a soldier, unprepared for diplomacy, parenthood, and the subtleties of a culture far beyond his own. Yet through courage, calm, and the simple act of trust, he had forged connections that transcended species. He had saved a life, protected an empire, and proven that humanity could leave a lasting mark even among the stars. Holding the infant close, Elias felt the bond pulse warmly, a reminder that trust and care could create power stronger than any weapon. The queen stood beside him, silent but steady, and together they gazed at the future in that quiet, luminous night. Elias Ward understood a truth deeper than any training or mission, that courage, compassion, and humanity could shape worlds, protect lives, and create bonds that endured beyond danger, time, or distance. The life bond had begun as a test, but it had become something greater, a connection that would guide, protect, and inspire, proving that even in the vast expanse of the universe, human strength was measured not only by skill, but by heart. The empire was safe, the infant was secure, And Elias Ward, human soldier and guardian, had become a beacon of hope, courage, and humanity in a world that would never forget the day a human calmed a royal child and changed the course of history. The following weeks tested Elias in ways he had never imagined. The life bond he shared with the infant had grown stronger, connecting him to the child's emotions and subtle reactions. But the palace was not as peaceful as it appeared. Whispers of dissent circulated among the council, old rivalries simmered beneath polite smiles, and the shadow of the warlord's threat loomed over every conversation. Elias had to remain vigilant at all times, for even the smallest lapse could put the infant's life and the empire at risk. He spent mornings in the nursery, observing and learning. The infant had an uncanny ability to sense moods, reacting instantly to tension, fear, or frustration. Elias learned to temper his own emotions, to remain calm and steady, even when his mind raced with strategy and worry. Every coo, every small gesture told him something about the child's state, and he adapted, adjusting his voice, posture, and even breathing to maintain the connection. It was exhausting, yet profoundly rewarding. Queen Zarivana watched him closely during these sessions. Her initial wariness had softened into cautious trust. She would sit nearby, offering advice when needed, yet allowing Elias to develop his own methods. "He senses more than most," she told him one afternoon, her voice gentle, "and he respects those who are calm and confident. That is why he responds to you. You are human, yet you embody qualities he understands instinctively." Elias nodded, feeling a swell of quiet pride. It was strange to hear praise from a queen of an alien empire, and even stranger to realize that he had earned her trust. Yet he also knew that trust could be fragile. One mistake, one misread signal, and the balance could collapse. The palace itself became a place of careful observation. Guards and attendants moved quietly, often checking in with Elias, noting the infant's reactions. Every interaction was an opportunity to learn, but also a reminder that danger could appear at any moment. The warlord's forces were still out there, testing defenses, seeking weaknesses, and perhaps even spies were already within the walls. One evening, as the twin moons rose over the crystalline city, Elias sat in the nursery, the infant resting peacefully against his chest. He hummed a gentle tune, one of the lullabies from his childhood, and the child's breathing remained steady. The queen entered quietly, observing from the doorway before speaking. "You have brought more than calm," she said softly. "You have brought him comfort, security, and trust. These are not gifts easily given, yet you have offered them without hesitation." Elias smiled faintly. "It's instinct, I think. I felt what he needed and tried to match it." Her gaze softened, and she stepped closer. "You have learned quickly, more quickly than I expected. Yet there is more to this bond than you realize. It is not just trust, it is influence. Your emotions, your decisions, even your fears affect him. You must remain aware at all times." Elias considered her words carefully. The bond was a gift, but also a responsibility heavier than any he had known. He could not afford to act impulsively or allow his emotions to cloud his judgment. Yet even as the weight pressed on him, he felt a quiet determination. He would protect this child no matter the cost. Days passed, filled with training, observation, and careful navigation of court politics. Elias learned to anticipate the council's questions, to respond to subtle challenges, and to demonstrate competence without arrogance. Some members continued to watch him with suspicion, while others began to accept his presence, impressed by his calm and unwavering dedication to the infant. Then, one morning, a new challenge arose. A message arrived from the outer sectors of the Empire. Scouts had detected unusual movement, and there were signs of preparation for an incursion. The Queen called a council meeting, bringing Elias into the heart of strategy discussions. "You must understand," she said, her golden eyes fixed on him. "The warlord knows of the life bond. He may attempt to use it against us, to manipulate or intimidate you. Your role is not only to protect the infant physically, but also to maintain control over your own emotions. Any fear or hesitation could be sensed and exploited. Elias nodded. Feeling the familiar rush of determination, he had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. This was not merely a matter of skill or strength. It was a test of patience, awareness, and inner control. He was no longer just a soldier. He was a guardian, a presence that could influence the fate of a child, queen, and an entire empire. Over the next days, preparations intensified. Security measures were heightened, patrols increased, and simulations conducted to anticipate potential threats. Elias trained alongside the palace guards, sharing human combat strategies and observing Varelian techniques. The queen occasionally joined them, her presence a reminder that she was both mother and ruler, and that the safety of her child was inseparable from the stability of her empire. Through it all, Elias maintained a constant connection with the infant. The child's reactions guided his actions, alerting him to subtle changes in the environment, sensing tension or hidden danger before anyone else. It was a partnership, unspoken but profound, and it grew stronger with each passing day. One afternoon, during a routine patrol of the palace grounds, Elias noticed a figure moving unusually through the outer gardens. The individual's gait was deliberate, almost predatory. Elias signaled to a guard, but the figure vanished before anyone could approach. His instincts, honed through years of training and reinforced by the bond, told him this was no ordinary intruder. That evening, he discussed the incident with the queen. "There are those who would seek to harm him," he said, nodding toward the nursery. "I sense it. Someone is testing our defenses, probing for weaknesses." Queen Zarivana's expression was serious. "I feared as much. The warlord is cunning. He will not attack openly until he believes he can exploit the life bond. You must remain vigilant, Elias. This is a game of patience and awareness." Elias spent the night in the nursery, keeping watch while the infant slept. The bond pulsed faintly, a constant reminder of the responsibility he bore. He had faced countless threats before, yet this vigilance was different. It required calm, focus, and unwavering attention, not just to the physical environment, but to emotions, intentions, and subtle energies that could influence the infant. Days later, a more direct threat emerged. A series of attacks on the Empire's outer settlements suggested that the warlord was testing reactions. Seeking to draw attention and assess defenses, the queen convened the council, bringing Elias to the center of the discussion. "You are now more than a protector," she said. "You are also a strategist. Your bond gives you insight, your calm gives you strength. You must guide our decisions, anticipate threats, and act decisively when necessary." Elias felt the weight of her words, but also a growing sense of purpose. He had come to Varelia as a soldier, unprepared for diplomacy, politics, or parenthood. Yet now, he was more than that. He was a guardian, a counselor, and a presence that could influence events in ways few humans ever experienced. Over the following weeks, Elias's bond with the infant deepened further. The child began to respond to subtle cues. A look, a gesture, a change in tone, and Elias learned to anticipate needs before they were expressed. The palace staff marveled at the connection, noting how calm the infant remained even during moments of tension. Yet the shadow of the warlord remained. Intelligence reports suggested an impending incursion, and the council prepared for defense. Elias trained, observed, and strategized, knowing that the coming days would test every skill he possessed. One evening, as the palace lay quiet under the twin moons, the queen approached him in the nursery. "Elias," she said softly, "there is more than strategy at play. There's trust, loyalty, and understanding. The bond you share with my son is more than protection. It is a connection that guides, informs, and strengthens. Do not underestimate it." Elias nodded, feeling a sense of resolve. He had learned much in a short time about the infant, the queen, and the empire. He had faced threats, both overt and subtle, and had grown stronger, more capable, and more attuned to the responsibilities that now defined his life as he watched the infant's sleep. Elias understood that the bond was not a limitation, but a gift. It allowed him to anticipate, to respond, and to protect in ways that would have been impossible otherwise. He was ready for whatever challenges lay ahead, confident that humanity, courage, and calm could meet even the most extraordinary tests. And so, in the quiet of the nursery, with the soft light of the twin moons casting gentle shadows across the crystalline walls, Elias Ward prepared for the trials yet to come. The bond had deepened, the trust had been earned, and the Empire's fate, at least in part, rested on his shoulders. He would not falter, he would not fail, and he would prove, through every action, thought, and choice, that being human could shape worlds, protect lives, and inspire loyalty across the stars. Elias had expected challenges in Varelia, but the reality of court politics was far more complicated than he could have imagined. The bond with the infant had granted him a connection no one else shared, but it had also made him visible in ways he was unprepared for. Every noble advisor, and even distant ally, seemed to watch his every move. Whispers followed him through the corridors, subtle glances measured his actions, and questions often lingered in the air before they were spoken. Queen Zaravana, though composed, could not shield him from these judgments entirely. "You must understand," she said one morning, her voice steady but tinged with worry. "There are those in the Empire who see your bond with the prince as a threat. They do not trust humans, and they fear your influence. You must navigate this carefully." Elias nodded, gripping the railing of the palace balcony as he looked out over the sprawling city below. The twin suns bathed the crystalline towers in gold and violet light, a beauty that did little to soothe the tension in his chest. "I understand," he said, "but the infant trusts me." "That has to count for something." "Counts for more than you realize," the queen replied. "But loyalty in our world is complicated. You will be tested, not just by enemies, but by those who claim to serve the infant's best interests." Leah spent the next few days learning the subtle rhythms of the palace. He observed the infant's reactions, noticing how the smallest changes in tone or gesture could set off a storm of discomfort or, conversely, contentment. Each success strengthened the bond, but each misstep reminded him of the fragility of the situation. The infant was perceptive, more so than any human child he had known, and he responded to intentions and emotions with uncanny precision. One afternoon, the palace erupted in chaos. Warning signals sounded through the halls, a sharp, resonant alarm that echoed with urgency. The queen appeared at Ilias's side, her expression taut with concern. "Something is wrong," she said. "Stay with the infant. I will handle the others." Ilias's heart raced as palace guards ran past, weapons in hand, their movements precise and urgent. Through the open door he could see figures approaching, not Varelians, but alien soldiers from a neighboring system. They were heavily armed, sleek in design, and clearly not here for diplomacy. Their intent was clear: to take the infant, the heir of the Varelian Empire, as leverage or worse. Without hesitation, Elias positioned himself between the attackers and the child. His training took over, but this was different from any combat he was protecting more than life itself. He was guarding a future, a fragile bond, and an innocent being. The infant, sensing the threat, emitted a small wail, but Elias hummed softly, keeping the bond active, projecting calm even as his body tensed for action. The invaders breached the main chamber. Elias moved quickly, using both human tactics and intuition. The hall was vast, filled with towering pillars and reflective surfaces that could disorient most attackers. Elias adapted, predicting movements, using the infant's subtle psychic feedback to anticipate strikes before they came. It was as if he and the child were two halves of a single mind, working together instinctively. The queen appeared behind him, her presence commanding. She used a subtle telekinetic power, a Varelian ability, to hold several attackers at bay. Elias marveled at her strength, even as he focused on defending the infant. They moved as a team, human and queen, protector and ruler, united by purpose. In urgency, minutes stretched like hours. Each attacker Elias incapacitated seemed to be replaced by another, relentless in their mission. Yet the infant remained calm in his arms, the bond radiating confidence and control. It was extraordinary. The bond allowed Elias to sense even the smallest shifts in threat, guiding his decisions with precision. Finally, the last of the attackers retreated, realizing that their mission was impossible. The palace was secure, but the warning was clear. Enemies would stop at nothing. They had known of the bond and sought to exploit it. Ilias's instincts told him this was only the beginning. Breathing heavily, Elias set the infant down beside the queen, who looked at him with a mixture of admiration and concern. "You have proven your strength," she said. "But this is only one of many tests. There will be others, more cunning, more dangerous. You must be prepared." Elias nodded, feeling the weight of her words settle over him. He had faced enemies before, but never had the stakes been so intimate. The infant's life, the future of an empire, and the trust of a queen now rested in part on his shoulders. It was a burden he had never anticipated, yet one he could not refuse. Over the following days, Elias focused on learning the intricacies of Varelian politics. He observed council meetings, noting the subtle tensions, alliances, and rivalries. Some members were wary, skeptical of his intentions. Others were openly hostile, seeing a human as an unworthy influence over the heir. Yet a few nodded in silent approval, recognizing his competence and the calm he brought to the child, the queen. Understanding the challenges he faced began teaching him more than etiquette. She explained the history of the empire, the threats, from neighboring systems and the fragile balance of power that guided every decision. Elias absorbed it all, realizing that diplomacy was as crucial as combat. His role as protector extended beyond the infant. It encompassed understanding the world he now lived in. One evening, as Elias prepared to rest, the queen approached him quietly. "Captain," she said softly, "there is more you must know. The life bond is not only a connection of trust, it is also a beacon. Those who seek to harm my son can sense it. They will attempt to use it against you, to manipulate or intimidate you. You must remain vigilant at all times." Elias listened, his mind racing. The life bond was a gift, but it was also a vulnerability. He could not allow fear to dominate, but he needed strategy, foresight, and constant awareness. "I understand," he said. "I will protect him, no matter what it takes." The days turned into weeks, and Elias's bond with the infant deepened. He learned to interpret the child's subtle cues, understanding needs and emotions that went beyond words. The infant responded to him in ways that amazed the court. A quiet coo, a small reach of the hand, a look of recognition. The council members who had doubted him began to change their tune, though cautiously, and some still whispered, wary of the human's influence. But others could not deny the bond's effectiveness. Elias also learned to navigate the queen's expectations. She was patient, kind, and fair, but she did not tolerate negligence. Every action he took was observed, every decision measured. He learned to anticipate her needs, to respect her authority while asserting his own judgment when it concerned. The infant's safety was a delicate balance, but one he grew more adept at with each passing day. Then, one afternoon, intelligence arrived with alarming news. Scouts reported unusual activity near the Empire's borders, signs of a warlord, gathering forces, likely aware of the bond, and seeking to exploit it. The threat was real and imminent. The queen called a council meeting, bringing Elias into the heart of the strategy discussion. "You must understand," she said, her golden eyes fixed on him. "This warlord knows of the life bond. He may try to capture my son to manipulate. You must be prepared for deception, ambush, and betrayal. Your role is more than protector. You are also our first line of defense, in mind and body." Elias felt the familiar rush of determination. He had faced impossible odds before, but this was different. He was not merely fighting for survival. He was fighting for a child, for a queen, and for the stability of an entire empire. Strategy, intuition, and calm would be his weapons, and the bond with the infant would be his guide. The days that followed were filled with preparation. Training exercises, simulations, and security assessments occupied his time. Yet even amidst the rigorous schedule, Elias found moments of connection with the infant, small smiles, gentle coos, and the warmth of trust growing stronger every day. The child had chosen him, and in return, Elias had chosen to dedicate himself entirely to this new, unexpected life. Then the warning came again, subtle, almost imperceptible. Scouts reported movement near the palace's outer sectors. It was not yet an attack, but the signs were clear. The warlord was probing defenses, testing reactions, waiting for the right moment to strike. Elias prepared. He would not fail. Bond demanded vigilance, and he would honor it with every ounce of his being. As night fell over the crystalline city, Elias stood on the balcony once more, the twin moons casting pale light across the palace grounds. The infant slept nearby, peacefully, and the queen observed from a distance, her expression unreadable but trusting. Elias knew the calm would not last forever. The bond had brought safety, but it had also brought attention. Enemies lurked, waiting. For a moment of weakness, he clenched his fists, feeling the bond pulse faintly in response to his determination. They would come, he knew, but he would be ready. He would protect the infant. He would stand beside the queen. And he would prove, in the most human way possible, that courage, calm, and unwavering loyalty could defy even the most dangerous threats. Elias Ward, soldier and guardian, had entered the heart of an alien empire. The bond had begun, and with it a test unlike any he had faced before. Yet he was ready, for he understood one truth above all: humanity, in its simplest, most compassionate form, could shape the fate of worlds. Captain Elias Ward had faced impossible missions before. He had walked through burning corridors on warships, negotiated with hostile alien diplomats, and survived space storms that shredded lesser ships like paper. Yet nothing had prepared him for the message that awaited him in orbit above Varelia. The message had come unexpectedly. Carried by a high-priority diplomatic drone, it was simple, almost too short. Captain Ward, your presence is requested by Queen Zarivana. Immediate departure required. Failure is not an option. There was no explanation, no hint of why a human soldier was summoned to the throne of an alien empire. Elias stared at the message, his mind spinning. Queen Zarivana was the ruler of the Varelian Empire, civilization famed for its elegance, intelligence, and strict customs. Humans were not enemies, but they were far from close allies. His promotion to captain was recent, and though he was proud of his record, he knew little about the intricacies of alien diplomacy. He had a choice to make: ignore the summons and risk the wrath of an entire civilization, or comply and step into an unknown that could very well be dangerous. His instincts, trained over years of service, whispered the answer: he would go. The space shuttle docked with the palace orbit station smoothly, its silver hull glinting under the soft light of Varelia's sun. Leah stepped onto the platform. Taking in the vastness of the station, unlike human structures, the Varelian architecture felt organic, almost alive. Curved walls shimmered faintly, resonating with a subtle hum that made his skin tingle. No human design could match this blend of elegance and technology. Every step he took echoed slightly, as if the building itself was aware of his presence. A Varelian attendant, tall and graceful, approached him. Her skin shimmered like polished pearl, and her eyes, deep violet with golden flecks, regarded him with unreadable curiosity. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice melodious yet firm. "Queen Zarivana awaits you. Follow me." Elias nodded, swallowing his nervousness. He followed her through corridors lined with living walls, plants that pulsed gently with light, and floors that seemed to glow beneath each footstep. He was aware of being watched, though he did not know by whom. In human embassies, subtle observation was expected, but here, the feeling was almost tangible, like the station itself was measuring him. Finally, they reached a set of grand doors, engraved with patterns that seemed to shift subtly when he looked directly at them. The attendant bowed slightly. "Beyond these doors, Captain, is the Queen." Elias straightened his shoulders and stepped forward. The throne chamber was vast. Light poured in from high translucent panels, bathing the room in a soft golden hue. At the center, a woman sat on a throne unlike any he had ever seen. No sharp edges, no heavy metallic structure. It was a living creation, curling gently around her form, responding to her presence. She looked at him, and for a moment, Elias felt as though she could see into his very thoughts. Queen Zarivana was breathtaking. Not in the sense of beauty as humans usually defined it, but in the way she carried authority. Every gesture was precise, yet effortless. Her eyes, like molten gold, rested on him with intensity. Yet behind the regal composure, Elias caught a flicker of something unexpected worry. "Captain Ward," she said, her voice low but commanding. "Thank you for coming on such short notice. I trust your journey was uneventful." Elias bowed slightly, choosing his words carefully. "Your Majesty, it was smooth. Thank you for accommodating my schedule." She inclined her head, then gestured toward a side passage. From behind the walls emerged a small figure, a child. Elias froze. The infant, barely more than a year old, had violet skin and hair that shimmered like liquid silver. But it was not just the alien features that caught his attention. It was the expression. The baby's eyes were wide and luminous, and his cries pierced the air like sharp, jagged light. "He has been unsettled," the Queen explained. "No matter who approaches him, he continues to cry. His caregivers, the finest in my empire, have failed." Her voice trembled slightly, though she tried to mask it with authority. "Captain Ward, I need someone who can bring him peace, and I am offering a promise." Elias felt his chest tighten. "A promise?" She leaned forward, her gaze unwavering. "If you can calm him, I will offer you my hand in marriage. Not as a whim, but as a formal binding, an alliance between our people." Elias blinked, speechless. This was not just an impossible task. It was an unimaginable proposition. He was a soldier, trained to fight, to lead, to survive. He was not a diplomat. He was certainly not a suitor for an alien queen. And yet, he sensed something deeper in her eyes, a plea masked by regal composure. He began, but words failed him. "Think carefully," the Queen said softly, rising from her throne. She extended her hand toward him, not in gesture of command, but of hope. "He is my son, and I cannot calm him myself. You are my only chance." Elias nodded slowly. It was absurd, frightening, and utterly unexpected. Yet something inside him stirred, a mixture of duty, curiosity, and perhaps even compassion. He could not refuse. He stepped toward the infant, who was now wriggling in the Queen's arms, crying with an intensity that echoed through the chamber. The sound was sharp, almost like it pierced the mind, and Elias felt an uncomfortable pressure. Behind his eyes, many humans would have flinched or stepped back. He did not. He reminded himself of all the situations he had survived, all the times he had faced fear head-on. This was no different. "Hello," he said gently, his voice low and calm. He did not try to speak the baby's language. The infant did not seem to need words. He focused instead on projecting calm, on steadying his own heartbeat. Elias remembered the lullabies his mother used to sing when he was a child. The melodies were simple words, soft, almost meaningless, but they carried warmth and safety. He hummed quietly. At first, the baby's cries only intensified, ears straining against the sound. Elias kept his tone even, adding a gentle rhythm, swaying slightly in place as he had seen parents do. Minutes passed. Every second felt like an eternity, and Elias could feel the tension in the room building. The Queen watched him intently, her expression a mixture of skepticism and hope. Then, slowly, the cries softened. The infant's wails became hiccups, then soft murmurs. Elias leaned closer, letting the warmth of his presence fill the space around the baby. Finally, the small head rested against his chest, eyes half closed, breathing steady. The chamber, once filled with chaos, now felt peaceful. Queen Zarivana stepped forward, awe evident in her eyes. You did it," she whispered. Elias allowed himself a small, relieved smile. "I just remembered home," he said simply. The Queen's lips curved into the faintest smile. "Your humanity, it is extraordinary." At that moment, Elias realized the weight of what had just happened. He had calmed a royal air, an act that no Varelian had managed in weeks. He had done something far beyond his training as a soldier. He had bridged the gap between two species through simple empathy and courage. Yet, even as relief washed over him, he felt a quiet tension settle in his chest. The Queen's promise was not empty. Her offer of marriage was real, and with it came a bond that would tie him to her family, to her world, perhaps forever. He was not yet sure if he wanted such a life, but he knew one thing. The path forward would be as unexpected as the one that had brought him here. For now, though, he allowed himself a single, small victory. He had faced the impossible, and he had succeeded. And in that quiet, sunlit throne room, Elias Ward finally understood that sometimes being human was enough to change the universe. The human ship sailed steadily through the endless expanse of stars. LaRusha had grown accustomed to the quiet rhythm of life aboard. Each day brought new sights, new discoveries, and new interactions with the crew. She watched the humans work. Together, their conversations filled with laughter, questions, and occasional disagreements, none of which ever turned cruel or mocking. It was a strange kind of harmony, chaotic at times, but comforting in its warmth. Lyra Shaw spent most of her time in the observation deck or the research labs. She had never been so close to so many alien specimens before. Plants from distant planets, small creatures captured for study, and minerals with colors humans had never seen danced in containers under soft lights. She often found herself lost in fascination, watching how the crew cared for each creature, how they measured, recorded, and theorized. It reminded her that life was not just about appearances or status. It was about growth, understanding, and care. One afternoon, Marcus entered the lab where LaRusha was examining a small, translucent plant from a planet near the outer rim. Its tendrils glowed faintly, pulsing with light. "You're studying that one again?" he asked with a small smile. LaRusha looked up, her violet eyes bright with curiosity. "It reacts to touch," she explained. "I have observed that its color changes depending on how it is handled. I think it communicates." Marcus nodded thoughtfully. Humans believe that life speaks in many forms. Some we can understand, some we cannot. You have a gift for noticing things others might miss. It is valuable. The compliment surprised her. Few in her life had ever acknowledged her abilities without hidden criticism. She nodded quietly, absorbing the words. The next days were filled with more discoveries. LaRusha learned to operate small equipment, assisted in mapping stellar phenomena, and even suggested minor adjustments to navigation based on her observations. Marcus often included her in crew meetings, asking her opinion on potential paths. Through uncharted systems or on scientific readings from previous explorations, each time she contributed, she noticed a subtle change in her self-confidence, replacing doubt, curiosity replacing fear, and a quiet sense of belonging where there had once been isolation. Yet, the shadow of the Zerothi Empire always lingered. Though far away, their agents monitored the ship from remote outposts, waiting for any sign of scandal or disobedience. LaRusha knew that, despite the freedom she had, she was still being watched. It was a reminder that her journey was more than personal. It was political. One evening, as the ship passed near a luminous nebula, LaRusha and Marcus stood on the observation deck. The colors swirled in waves of pink, gold, and violet, reflecting in their eyes. "It is beautiful," she whispered. "It is," Marcus agreed. "And it reminds me that there is so much out there we do not yet understand. Every star, every planet, every life form is a story waiting to be told, or we are lucky to witness." LaRusha nodded, feeling the truth in his words. She had spent years confined by the rigid expectations of her empire, never imagining that there was a universe so vast, so full of possibilities. The nebula seemed to pulse with promise, and she felt a stirring of hope that she had not allowed herself to feel in a long time. As the ship continued its journey, they encountered an uncharted system with a planet that immediately drew their attention. It was covered in strange forests that glowed faintly in the darkness, and rivers of light ran like veins across its surface. The sensors detected life forms with unique biochemistry, some of which seemed to interact with energy fields in ways humans and Zerothi alike had never recorded. "This planet is remarkable," Marcus said, as they prepared to descend in the ship's smaller shuttle. "Oh, we may find species here that could teach us things no one has seen before." LaRusha felt a surge of excitement. For the first time, she was not a princess under scrutiny, nor a pawn in a political game. She was an explorer, part of a team seeking knowledge. She assisted with preparations, checking equipment, reviewing readings, and suggesting landing coordinates based on her observations. Her confidence grew with each task she completed. The descent was smooth. The shuttle landed on a plateau surrounded by glowing flora. Tiny creatures with translucent bodies and radiant patterns scurried among the luminous plants. Responding to their presence with curiosity rather than fear, Larusha knelt down to observe one, its delicate wings flickering in soft light. "It seems aware of us," she whispered. Marcus crouched beside her. "Yes, and it is not afraid."
Wow.
That is a rare gift. Most life forms instinctively avoid us. Here, they seem trusting. They spent hours studying the ecosystem. Larusha carefully documented the interactions, noting patterns in the creature's behavior. The way plants responded to movement and touch, and subtle shifts in the air and soil. She realized that every element of this world was connected, delicate, yet resilient. It fascinated her, filling her with a sense of wonder that she had not felt since childhood. During the exploration, Marcus spoke of humanity's approach to challenges. "Humans often face impossible odds," he said, gesturing to the strange landscape. "We fail many times before we succeed, but we do not give up. We adapt, we learn, and we try again. That is why we survive." Larusha listened, absorbing his words. She had been told her condition was permanent, that her life had limitations. Yet here, in the presence of creatures adapting in ways she could barely comprehend, she felt a possibility she had never considered. Perhaps there were solutions beyond the scope of Zarathi medicine. Perhaps she had not reached the end of her story. The day ended with them returning to the shuttle, carrying samples and data. Larusha felt a quiet thrill at what they had discovered. She shared her observations with the crew, offering insights that even Marcus admitted were perceptive. The humans treated her contributions with respect, discussing theories and possibilities rather than dismissing her ideas. That night, as the ship traveled through the dark expanse, Larusha reflected on her life. She had been given to Marcus as a joke expected to be embarrassed and humiliated. Instead, she had found freedom, respect, and purpose. She realized that she had underestimated humans and in turn had underestimated herself. There was a spark within her that had been dormant, waiting for the right circumstances to ignite. The days that followed were filled with continued exploration and learning. Larusha discovered that the planet's bioluminescent enzymes had unusual properties. They seemed to react with dormant cells in ways that could theoretically stimulate growth or restoration in multiple species. She shared her observations with Marcus and the crew, discussing possibilities and ethical considerations. The humans listened attentively, offering suggestions and theories based on their own scientific experiences. Larusha felt a growing sense of collaboration. She was not a subject to be studied, nor a pawn to be manipulated. She was a contributor, a thinker, and a part of a team that valued her insights. The sense of accomplishment, combined with the awe of exploration, filled her with a quiet confidence. She realized that the universe was far larger and more forgiving than she had ever imagined. The Zarathi Watchers continued to monitor their journey, but Larusha paid them little mind. She understood that their scrutiny was a reminder of her past, yet it could not define her present or future. Here, aboard the human ship, among life forms both known and unknown, she felt truly alive. One evening, as they navigated past a cluster of small luminescent asteroids, Marcus approached Larusha with a gentle smile. "You have changed," he said quietly. "Since the day you came aboard, you have grown in ways I did not expect. You see things differently, and you inspire the crew in ways you might not even notice." Larusha considered his words. She had felt the change herself, the confidence, the curiosity, the quiet courage that had replaced doubt. "I suppose," she replied softly, "that the galaxy has a way of teaching us lessons we never expected. And perhaps I was given this opportunity not as a joke, but as a chance to learn who I truly am." Marcus nodded. "Exactly. You are not defined by what others believe you cannot do. You are defined by what you choose to do, by the courage to explore and understand." For the first time, Lirusha allowed herself to dream without fear. She imagined discovering new worlds, solving mysteries that had baffled even the most advanced minds, and perhaps finding solutions to her own challenges. She no longer saw herself as the infertile princess, a figure of ridicule. She saw herself as a being capable of growth, learning, and meaningful contribution. The human ship sailed on, gliding through the galaxy's endless wonders. Lirusha stood at the observation deck, her gaze fixed on distant stars. Nebulae, planets, and alien life forms she had encountered were only the beginning. She understood now that the universe was filled with possibilities, and that she was no longer a passive pawn of circumstance. She was an active participant in the story of life itself, and as the stars stretched infinitely before her, she felt a quiet but powerful resolve. No longer would she be defined by the expectations of others. No longer would she be constrained by fear or ridicule. She was free to explore, to learn, and to discover not only the universe but herself. The journey with Marcus and the human crew had already changed her life. The galaxy had shown her wonders, and the humans had shown her respect and understanding. In return, she had begun to see herself differently.